What's up, guys? Long time no see. It's Luke here, and sorry, my hair is wet. I was just in the shower. I was just having a think, and I've been thinking about this for a while, but I just wanted to talk about the word gaijin today, because I don't know. It's funny because I used to acquaint myself with the word gaijin, and I feel like a lot of people in the AJAC community too, call themselves gaijin, like it's whatever. But then I feel like when you actually come and live in Japan, it's a different nuance to the word, where it's like, or it could be two other things, and I should warn you guys first, is I'm going to rant a little bit in this. This is going to be a little bit of a rant video. But when you first learn the word gaijin, and if anyone doesn't know, I guess, which most people watch my videos probably do, but gaijin just basically means a foreigner, but there's two different words. Technically the correct word is gaikokujin, which is the full word, and the kanji for gaikokujin means it's literally outside country person, and then gaijin is basically just cutting out the country, so it basically is outside person. But there's all sorts of nuances to the words. But I feel like people that are doing AJ and learning Japanese, when they first learn the word gaijin, they see it's almost kind of like cool in the sense that even if you understand somewhat of the nuance, it's like you're making fun of yourself. It's kind of like the edgy coolness, I guess. And then you're like me, but so there's that side of it. But then there's the other side of it that people learn it, maybe they think it's cool, but they don't actually understand the nuance, because in order to truly understand the nuance of the word gaijin, and at least how Japanese people use it in real life, is to actually come to Japan and like live here for however many years and experience it in daily life. And as of this month, actually, in another couple weeks, it'll actually be 2 years since I've come and I've been living here, and a lot has happened, and I haven't really shared a lot of that with you guys on YouTube, but a lot has happened. My life is pretty much folded out in Japan and kind of developed itself in some ways, and I've experienced a lot. I feel like I've grown up quite a bit as a person too, and hopefully I can make more videos, kind of like where I just kind of have like this spontaneous thought, and I can just rant on it, and I can give you guys some of my maybe insight or experience, since living in Japan, and what I feel about certain topics or whatnot. But anyways, gaijin, yeah. So, how should I put this? When you ask a Japanese person, and this is kind of important, when you ask a Japanese person what's the difference between gaijin and gaikokujin, you'll get a various amount or different types of responses to that question. And the most common one really is basically, oh, well, there's no difference. Gaijin is just a shortened version of gaikokujin. It's just, gaikokujinを略したバージョン, is gaijin. And that's like the most common one I see. But it differs, by person, who you ask. Some people, and I'm just gonna get this clear off the bat. Just definition-wise alone, and I guess what's politically correct is gaikokujin, and that's always going to be the case. And then gaijin, from almost pretty much objective standard, is kind of the not correct, not polite way to refer to someone that's not Japanese, at least by physical appearance. But we'll get into kind of more of the nuance, I guess. But yeah, when you ask a Japanese person, they'll basically, most of them, I feel like they'll just say, oh, well, that's just an abbreviation of gaikokujin. But then some people that are, I guess, a little bit more aware, they will respond in saying, yeah, they'll be basically what I just said, and they'll say, yeah, the politically correct one is gaikokujin, but we just say gaijin because it's easier to say. That is very common actually. We just say gaijin because it's easier to say. A lot of people will say that. But the people that do say that, a lot of times sometimes they'll even admit that they understand that gaijin is like not the correct way. It's not really the polite way of calling a foreign person. So they're self-aware, but at the same time, their excuse is, well, it's the easy way to say. And I guess I should point out this too. Why does this even matter? And this is a question too. And I've thought about this for a while, because like I said, when I first started learning Japanese, or when I first came to Japan or anything like that, it didn't matter to me at all. And even now, it doesn't really matter to me because I've kind of gotten used to it. But there is a certain level, I think, where you come to Japan, you first off, before even coming to Japan, you spent multiple years, 5+ years or whatever, learning Japanese, being fascinated with the culture, wanting to live here, that being your number one goal, your number one dream or whatever. And basically you would have put loads of effort and time into achieving that, right? And then when you come to Japan, you're basically living in Japan just as a Japanese person, paying Japanese tax, living in Japanese, in the sense that, you don't have an English, bubble of friends, all your friends are Japanese, all the activities you acquaint yourself with, they're all in Japanese, so in your mind, you're pretty much a Japanese person in the sense that, everything you're doing is Japanese. But to Japanese people, and this is something, it doesn't matter, and this is kind of the sad truth about Japan, but it doesn't matter how long you lived in Japan, it doesn't matter how good you are at Japanese. If you're a foreigner, and if you look like me, or, just not Japanese, and that is Japanese people are also, this is another thing, Japanese people are very, very judgmental in the sense that even if you look slightly different than a completely full junsei na Nihonjin Japanese person, they will pick that out, and they will be able to tell, and they'll point that out. For example, my wife she's pretty much completely Japanese, but technically her grandpa was half Japanese, half Brazilian. So I guess she's considered a quarter, which is, this is something you'd never see that in America, because everyone is a mix between, however many races. So no one would even bother calling you a quarter or a half or whatever. But in Japan, there's all these different terms. But in Japan, yeah, she's considered a quarter. And people, sometimes she even gets spoken to in broken English or whatever, or she'll be asked, where she's from or whatever. And then she'll, respond, I'm Japanese. So that's a thing that happens in Japan. But yeah, so the word gaijin, basically, yeah, what I was going on is doesn't matter how good you are Japanese, it doesn't matter, how long you've lived in Japan. When you walk into a convenience store, when you walk into a supermarket, when you walk into anywhere really, and you don't look fully Japanese, you're just a gaijin. And then on top of that, there's the expectation that you don't speak Japanese, you don't know anything. But of course I will say there's a difference between, Japanese people are really good at how do you say, seeking out the differences. So even if you do look foreign, but you kind of have the atmosphere, the雰囲気 of a Japanese person, when you walk into a convenience store, and you don't say anything, you don't look at the, one thing is, in America or any other countries, right, if you walk into somewhere and someone speaks to you, generally, you maybe look at them or whatever, maybe even sometimes you'll say something back, or, just the way you walk, just the way you carry yourself. Japanese people can kind of sense that, oh, this person probably lives in Japan. He's a gaijin, but he probably lives in Japan, probably speaks Japanese, just by the雰囲気, the way he, whatever. And that's something that I find is definitely true, because well, I won't name names, yeah, but I've had, I have foreign friends in Japan, and if you're watching this, you probably know, but walk into a convenience store and it's just the雰囲気, the atmosphere is just not there. So then you get spoken in, to English, and and that's just kind of common, because they can kind of sense that, oh, this person's probably not Japanese. So there's that. And but going back to kind of the differences between gaijin and gaikokujin, so I will kind of get to my conclusion now, and then talk about why I think that in a second. But basically, like I said, up until now, I thought gaijin was like whatever, complete. In my opinion, I didn't really understand the nuance either. But now that I've lived here, I will say that like gaijin is kind of just, in my opinion, it's just not nice. It's not a nice phrase. It's not a nice word. I don't think that Japanese people should be using it to foreigners, at least like on a common whatever, or especially in like a professional sense. I should mention that. I guess it depends on whatever, but like if you're friends and stuff like that with the person, and they know you, you know them, and whatever, and it's like you guys are close, and then they're calling you a gaijin or whatever, and it's just kind of like you're joking about or whatever. That's fine, but especially in a professional sense. Like hearing your boss or whatever, and this is like, I guess, a real life example, I guess, but where I work and stuff, hearing your boss, talking about foreigners, even though you're a foreigner right next to them, and then saying like gaijin this, gaijin that, and oh, a gaijin came in for an interview, but he was, this and that, it's like, of course it matters, like the context too after using the word gaijin. But just in general, the word itself and the way in the use case, I guess, that Japanese people use the word gaijin, it's just kind of like, in Japanese, it's like, I don't know, kitanai, it's not pleasant. I'll just, so yeah, my kind of conclusion to this is, after living here for 2 years, after experiencing life in Japanese society, after working at a Japanese company now for about 2 years, I don't think gaijin is it's definitely not respectful either too, and most people subconsciously know that, and I think that's a big point. Most people subconsciously know that the right word to use is gaikokujin. And let me get into an actual kind of objective example. So if you actually Google the word gaijin, the first thing pretty much that'll come up by NHK is that basically, I'll just read it. So from the NHK dictionary, basically it says, NHK is saying, from the dictionary, the direct meaning is 外国人には次のような意味があります。仲間以外の人。So 疎遠な人。But 仲間以外の人. And that's basically means, someone that's not your friend, or someone that's outside your group, kind of. And when you look at the actual kanji, the characters that make up the word gaijin, it's literally outside a person. So, just that alone kind of gives you the nuance. It's like, that's not really respectful. It's not nice, way of calling people, right? Outside person, And so this this definition that the NHK is referring to is pretty accurate, nakama igai no hito, someone that's not your friend, someone that's not part of your group, it's a different herd of kind of that kind of like disconnection between you and the person. If you go actually and even Japanese people, there's a whole thing. The first thing that comes up about the definition from the dictionary the NHK is referring to, it's literally, gaijin to yobanai de gaikoku ni roots no kodomo tachi no ijime. So it's about problems between regarding bullying for like half Japanese kids in school and stuff, which is another big problem in Japan. So yeah, and then also I've got another dictionary here. This is actually one of the first dictionaries I got when I got into AJAP, whatever. But it's the Shimekai. You can see it's quite used, quite old now. All the text is pretty much faded off. But it's the Shimekai. What edition is this? It's don't even know if it says the edition. It probably does, but I can't read it because the text is all. Yeah, so basically, if you do get this dictionary, do not leave it without the case. And the case, I mean, is the box, this thing, anywhere near sunlight for however long. And even if you don't, it's probably going to fade off. The text inside is completely fine. But anyways, if you go, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but let's see. Yeah, you probably won't be able to see this, but on this page, there is the definition from Shinmeikai, and I'll just read it to you. But basically, this one, of course, every dictionary, same thing in English, it's going to give a slightly different definition. This one doesn't actually say the, nakama igai no hito bit. I don't know what dictionary this is from, but the NHK is referring to it. Yeah, I don't know. But anyways, I'll just read the definition. So basically, yeah, it says gaijin, and then it says gaikokujin, basically referring that it is in a way a abbreviation, rigaku in Japanese, right? But then also it says, there's a section where it says unyo, which is actually how it's used in real life, and this is what's important. So where it says unyo, and it basically reads, 外国人を自分たちとは相入れない人間と見る、排他的な差別意識が合意され、当の外国人にも不快感を与えることがある。で、変な外人。So basically what that means, if you didn't get that, is to the actual foreigner or the person you're speaking to, basically gives a feeling that you and I are different. We're not the same. We're not the same. We don't have the same thoughts. And kind of, how do you say, haita is exclude? Yeah, exclusion feeling, feeling of being excluded in the sense that, again, you and I have different thoughts. We're not the same. Almost like we're a different species. And then it literally says that it does have kind of a racist, not intention, but there is kind of a racist feeling in the word. And that it does actually, it can make the listener, or the foreigner in this case, if you use the word to them, it can make the foreigner feel uncomfortable and, not good, not happy, right? So it literally says this in, and like I said, the unyo section, which is how it's actually used. So I don't think it's really even a question of whether or not the word gaijin is politically correct. It's more so about, and I guess this is another reason why I'm making this video, is I wanted to know, especially people who actually live in Japan, if you don't live in Japan, you can give me your feedback, whatever, it's whatever. But specifically people who live in Japan and have lived in Japan for multiple years, I want to kind of understand how, I'm just curious to see how other people think of the word, what do they think when they get called? Do they care at all? If they don't care, why don't they care? If they do care, why do they care? Like I said in the beginning, it's not like I don't really pay attention to it too much, but in certain scenarios, like I said, in a professional scenario, like at work or whatever, with your boss and stuff like that, I do believe that it is kind of disrespectful in a sense, and it's definitely not professional in my point of view. But then also I think of kind of like the broad picture of like living in Japan. When you live in Japan, it's like, for example, if you were, this is just from an American's perspective, right? If you're a Mexican person who immigrates to America and works his ass off for 40 years, becomes pretty much native in the language, has his own business in America, has a whole family, you'd probably want to consider yourself American to a certain extent at some point, right? And I feel like the same kind of applies to Japan. Of course, but there's a difference between that, in Japan and the rest of the world. Whereas in Japan, it's very difficult as a foreigner to be accepted as a Japanese person, like I mentioned, earlier, you're pretty much always going to be considered as like a foreigner. But yeah, that's kind of the broad picture of this, and maybe I'll go on another rant about kind of going into more detail about that. Like I said, it's not, in daily life you kind of get used to it, and it's not really a big deal, but it is something that every once in a while it crosses my mind, and I start to think, it's a bit odd. It's a bit odd, and sometimes it does actually make me feel kind of annoyed, so yeah, I don't know. I just kind of wanted to make this rant video. If you're curious, maybe and you don't know much about the topic, I guess look into it, because it's kind of interesting. Because Japanese people, they talk about this too. It's not just foreigners. Like I said, with the NHK mentioning it too, it has to do with bullying happening in Japan regarding foreign, well, half Japanese, I guess, kids in school and stuff. So yeah, I mean, Google it, look into it, and yeah, I'd love to hear your guys' feedback. What do you guys think about it? And what's your point of view with it? How do you perceive it? Specifically, people who live in Japan and have lived here for a while. Because that's honestly, if I'm being honest, those are the people that their opinion are gonna matter the most when it comes to this. Because I feel like you actually have to live here and experience culture and kind of actually truly understand the nuance before you can give a valid opinion. But anyways, yeah, that was it. Sorry for not making any videos for a while, but yeah, like I said, hopefully I can make similar type of videos to this once I get settled down, and maybe just talk about all the stuff that's happened in my life, and yeah. But anyways, that's it for now. See ya.